Magandang umaga. Thank you all for being here. I'd just like to announce that we'll start the program in 3 minutes. We're just fixing a few technical elements of our program, but we will begin soon. Thank you.
Ayan ang pambansang awit ng
Amigo. Hello. Morning po, magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. Ako po si 𝗩𝗏𝗀 Director ng 𝗩𝗏𝗀𝗡𝗏 UP Institute of Creative Writing. So part po ng prosesong ito ay humaharap ako sa inyo para ipakilala ang ating programa. Pero bago po ang lahat, nataasan ba kayo dun sa pitch ng Lupang Hinirang kanina? Medyo may kataasan po, no? Tapos may mga pamilitar pa, no? Kaya ano, so advice po natin next time na wag naman masyadong marahas yung visuals at wag masyadong mataas. Welcome po sa ating sa UP Diliman, sa Palma Hall. At ang pangalan po nating programa ay PAN. Nagsimula po siya bilang, long time ago po, nung hindi pa ako kasama sa ICW, ay Panayam series po yung tawag niya. So nagtatampok mostly ng members ng UP ICW. Alam po natin na nagpandemya noong 2020 at kailangan mag-shift online. Kaya po ang PAN na Panayam series ay naging Panayam sa Panitikan sa panahon ng pandemya na naisip. Pag mga ganyang witty word choices, 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗏 yan. So isa si Sir 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗏 sa nag-formulate ng pangalan at sa panahong ito si Dr. Rolando Tolentino, ang director. Nung nag-shift kami online, syempre ang moda natin kahit na tayo ay nakakulong sa ating mga tahanan, kailangan magpatuloy ng pagpapakilala ng mga ginagawa ng mga tao na may a little bit of economic support kasi alam po natin na iba sa mga artista na ng panahon na yon ay freelancers, yung iba pa ay nasa performing arts, kailangan rumakit. So totoo naman merong ayuda component po ito. So gusto natin na visible ang ating mga kasamang artists and at the same time may konting tulong pinansyal. Parang sabay-sabay na pinapakilala ang mga manulat at artista. Kaya nga po kasabay nito yung component din niya ay may ganap na yung panayam ay kwentuhan tungkol sa writing process, topics on literature and creative writing. Ang ganap naman po ay nakatutok talaga sa pagbabahagi ng literary readings, performances mula sa ating mga artista. At eventually, nung tayo po ay nagbalik sa face-to-face setup, naisip namin na maganda naman ipagpatuloy pa rin dahil po nagiging maganda siyang pagkakataon para magsama-sama ang manunulat sa isang espasyo at mag-usap tungkol sa mga paksa, mga aklat, mga trabahong ginagawa ng mga manunulat na importante sa atin sa ngayon. Di ba dahil nga dito nakita ko si Miss Susan Lara na Facebook friend ko lang. So hello po, Ma'am Susan. Si Vlad po. Kaka-collab namin si Miss Susan sa maraming activities ng ICW. Kaya tunay namang literature brings people together. Dahil nagkita kami ni Miss Susan. Hello po, nice to see you po. So may konti akong spiel na kailangang basahin bilang director. So hindi na po matalas ang memorya kaya meron pong kodigo. So ang kailangan ko po sabihin bukod sa nasabi na ito po ay part ng Literature for Social Development Project na ang akto ni may LSD, hindi po ako nag-isip noon. Wala ano lang po kasi yung nag-isip. Pero ang trust ng program na ito ay magbahagi, gumawa ng mga programa na kung hindi murang-mura ang bayad ay halos libre na nga at accessible sa pinakamaraming tao na posible. So alam po natin na ang sining ay maraming bayad, maraming cost, maraming gastos na involved at sinisikap natin from time to time na gumawa ng mga gawain na paliliitin yung gap, yung puwang ng ating mga nililikha doon sa ating mga target readers at target audience. So yun po yung kaya po marami tayong sa mga forum na ganito, may mga workshop para sa teachers, para sa mga enthusiast ng creative writing. So essentially, gusto nating ilapit hanggang sa kung ano yung kaya natin ang ating sining, ang panitikan sa pinakamalawak na audience na kung kakayanin ay hindi sila kailangan singilin maliban sa kanilang presensya at atensyon. Gusto ko rin pong sabihin na ito po ay activity 3 of 3 this week na UP-ICW. So nung Monday, kami po ay may Pride event sa aming Gonzalo Gonzales Reading Room. Baklatan yung pangalan po niya. So podcast with very interesting discussions with mga kilalang manunulat at practitioners sa malikayang pagsulat sa usapin ng queer writing. Hello March, na part ng kinaiya na book namin. So bili po rin kayo ng kinaiya na book. Daming daming ad-lib. Nakabahan po kasi. Pero yun nga po, yung kahapon po ay nag-interdisciplinary book forum kami na sa esensya ay nagtatampok na libro na tatalakay ng iba't ibang eksperto mula sa iba't ibang disiplina. So ang 𝗩𝗶𝘀𝗶𝗃 ni 𝗍𝗶𝘍𝗶𝗏 ay tinalakay sa sipat ng gastronomy, journalism at iba pa mga eksperto. So sa CMC naman po yan. At itong ating pangatlo ay ito nga yung pagtatampok sa ating mga kasamang babaeng manunulat na kinikilala sa kanilang iba't ibang mga tagumpay sa usapin ng malikhaing pagsulat. Isa po sa papel ng ating opisina ay yun, pagpapakilala at muling pagpapakilala kasi wala naman tayong pretense na hindi sikat. Sana nga po walang bumomba dito kasi parang marami mawawalang mga kilalang manunulat. So, minsan nagugulat pa rin kami na dahil nga yung iba ay mga kaibigan, mga nakasama na. So, halimbawa, si 𝗍𝗍𝗶𝗃 ay kasama ko sa workshop, tapos si Angela ay wala, kumarihan. Kita kami sa Dumaguete, tapos tambay-tambay, ganyan. So, nakakalimutan mo na mga big time pala yung naiimbitahan natin yung mga tao. Pero sa gitna nito, inisip natin na may puwang pa para makilala muli ang mga manunulat na may iba't iba ng tagumpay. Kaya po, yun yung ginagawa namin. Sana ay pagpapalawak pa ng reach, paglalatag ng mga puwang para magpalawak at magpalaganap pa. Ngayong araw ay pinagsama-sama natin ang apat na babaeng manunulat na may magkakaibang direksyon sa mga piniling likhaan ng malikhaing piyesa pero nagkakaisa sa pagmamahal na itawid ang kanilang mga salaysay at talinghaga. So nabanggit ko na po iba, banggitin ko lang po ulit, nagpapasalamat tayo kay 𝗍𝗶𝗀𝗃 Tagasa, nandito po, magandang umaga po at salamat. Monica Macansantos, salamat din sa pagpili sa likhaan at si Angela, si 𝗍𝗶𝘃 or FH Batacan, maraming salamat po sa kanila kasama ng kanilang mga press na nag-house at nagdimbang kanilang mga libro. Miss Jen and everyone po, salamat po sa pag-uwi dito sa likhaan para sa muling pagpapakilala ng mga nalikhang aklat. So masaya po yung pakiramdam na umuwi sa mga tao na pamilyar sa inyo, nagkakasundo sa layunin ng pagsulong ng panitikan. Pagkakataon din ito para may bago makilala sa kanilang proseso at buhay possibly. So nung kami po ni 𝗍𝗍𝗃 ay nagkakilala, syempre surprise kasi medyo tahimik po siya kapag pag hindi nyo pa katropa, pero napakahusay palang mag-gitara sa karat, napakahusay kumanta. Hindi naman po required na biglang kumanta si Miss Jet o si Miss Monica biglaan. Pero ang gusto lang po natin sabihin ay syempre sa ganitong mga pagtitipon, lagi tayong may madidiscovering bago bukod sa kanilang proseso tungkol din sa mga bagay, paksa at taong mahalaga sa kanila. At excited po tayo dyan. Ngayon po, bilang pangatlong gawain na ngayong linggo, parang nagreklamo po. Nabanggit lang, walang pahinga, walang tulugan. Ika nga ni Kuya Germs na siguro lampas 50%, wala na may kakilala. At least may isa po may kakilala kay Master Showman. Edad reveal, age reveal tayo lahat. Pero bilang pangatlong gawain po, gusto lang po nating maglaan ng panahon at puwang sa ating live, na, sabihin ko, kailangan po mag-shout out dun sa ating mga kasama sa ICW na isinabuhay ang pagtitipong ito. Alam ko syempre nandiyan po ang ating project research assistants, napakarami nasa likod po. Sila po yung mga kumukontak sa inyo, nagpa-facilitate ang live stream, nagtatawid ng mga questions, at siguro magbibili na rin po ako na sa ating writers para po part ng project na ito ay book promotion din. So after po ng event, merong mag-interview lang saglit para magkwento to ko sa libro. Para meron po tayong post-event promotion, social media promotion. So lahat po ay nasa ating staff sa ICW. Pero syempre special shoutout kina 𝗍𝗀𝗀𝗃 sa kay Neil, kay Johnny de la Cruz na sila po yung pangunahing taga-sulong ng project na ito. Yung ating technical staff na 3 araw nang nagse-set up ng mga text, nandiyan po si Miggy, si AD, siyempre si Neil, si Carlo po ang aming masama po ito pero permanent JO. Hopefully magkaroon po tayo ng mas plantilla pa sa mga tao. Pero sila po ay 3 araw na nagpa-facilitate nitong mga gawain na ito. At syempre kailangan banggitin ang ating admin officer, si Kuya Ronnie. So na quietly supervising our events from Monday until now. So yung mga 7 AM, 8 AM, check po yung mga copy and everything. Thank you Kuya Ronnie sa pag-facilitate at nandiyan po yung syempre yung mga usual na kasama natin. Sobrang dami po namin kaya baka 10:30 na po kapag tinuloy pa natin. Pero yun lang po yung ilang mga key na tao. At syempre, salamat po sa mga kasamang manunulat at mga may interes sa pagsusulat na dumalo dito. At bilang pangwakas, bago ko gawin yung second role ko, sabi ni FH Batacan nung kami na sa UP National Writers Workshop, bilang mensahe sa akin tungkol sa pagsusulat ay may notebook na binigay tapos sabi lang ay keep the music playing bilang pagtukoy doon sa pagpapatuloy lang ng pagsusulat. At na-discover namin na bukod sa paggawa ng sarili mo mga akda, isang paraan ng pagpapatuloy ay ibahagi din yung ginagawa ng mga kasama namin. So ito po yung paraan ng 𝗍𝗶𝘁𝗶𝗹 para pagpatuloy ang musika at paggawa ng panitikan. So sana po ma-enjoy natin ang programa today. Magandang araw po sa ating lahat. Thank you po. Bago ko po i-turn over sa ating moderator, parang director-moderator, pero may moderator po talaga. Nagpapasalamat at ipapakilala ko po si Professor Gabrielle Paras, si Ma'am Gabi. Magandang umaga po. Siya po ay faculty member ng Department of Speech Communication and Theater Arts sa UP Diliman. She earned her BA in Speech Communication from the same university and is currently pursuing her MA in Communication at the Ateneo de Manila University. Hello po, Ateneo friends, na nandyan din naman. Sila Nico. Her research interests center on women's studies, political communication, digital media, and rhetoric. Papasok ko na po ang mikropono kay Ma'am Gabi.
Maraming salamat, Sir Vlad. And of course, sa 𝗍𝗶𝘁𝗶𝗶, for making all these events possible. At katulad nga ng sinabi ni Sir Vlad, whether you are here in person today or watching via our free live stream, diba? Thank you for joining us as we venture through another episode of Panayam sa Panitikan, also known as PAN. So PAN is a series of lectures and discussions organized by the Likhaan UP Institute of Creative Writing, designed to support writers, cultivate communities for the safe exchange of ideas, and foster dialogue on the enrichment of individual craft. Na-introduce na po ako, but just to reiterate, my name is Gabi and I'll be your moderator for today. So in just a little while, I'm sure we're all excited because we will be joined by women writers who will be discussing their experiences and of course their literary works. So siguro I can already ask them to join me here in front. No? We will be joined by a crime fiction legend, no? Accidents Happen is the book that she has written and will be sharing for today. Ma'am FH Batacan. Okay, she has written a collection of essays on one's own personal journey towards home, returning to my father's kitchens. Let's all welcome Miss Monica Macansantos. She will be sharing about a collection of poems on loving and losing girlhood and womanhood. Young enough to play, let's all welcome Gabrielle Fabunan. And finally, she has written a work of speculative fiction involving Philippine supernatural creatures entitled The Secret Lives of 𝗍𝗶𝘁𝗆s. Let's all welcome Ms. Jet Tagasa. So I'm truly excited to be with all of these writers today and be the moderator for today's discussion. It's a privilege to be here, not only because we will have a conversation on the production of literature, the practice of creative writing, but also, and more importantly, as a feminist myself, as a young Filipina reader, because we have a unique opportunity to spotlight Filipina voices within that conversation. So I'm very happy today to introduce the title of today's episode of Panayam Pinay, kasama ang apat na kababaihang manunulat. Okay, so of course, without further ado, I think we can begin our panel discussion. Let me change my spot, no, para I'm not blocking anyone. Right? Okay. So we will begin with our panel discussion for today. And of course, we'll first hear from our discussants, all four of our discussants, and then have an open Q&A after all of our four writers have shared about their experiences, their processes, and about their literary works. So let me first introduce our first author for today. 𝗩𝗶𝘁𝗀𝗃 is a Filipino journalist and a writer of crime and mystery fiction. She worked in the Philippine intelligence community for nearly a decade and later switched careers to journalism. She has won 2 Don Carlos Palanca Memorial Awards for Literature, including the 1999 Grand Prize for the English novel for her first novel, Smaller and Smaller Circles. Published in its original shorter form by the University of the Philippines Press in 2002. The novel would go on to win the Manila Critics Circle National Book Award in 2002, as well as the Madrigal Gonzalez Best First Book Award in 2003. In 2008, her speculative fiction story Keeping Time won first prize in the English category of the 2008 Free Press Literary Awards, and in 2013, her crime fiction story Comforter of the Afflicted was published in Manila 𝗠𝗏, part of the 𝗠𝗏 series by Brooklyn-based Akashic Books. She was signed on by literary agents Books at Jacaranda LLP in 2011. Through them, she connected with New York City-based international crime fiction publisher Soho Press, which published Smaller and Smaller Circles as an expanded novel in 2015. 2 years later, the Philippines TBA Studios acquired the film rights and adopted the novel into a feature film directed by Raya Martin. In April 2024, she was awarded the 𝗍𝗶𝘃𝗀𝗃 Alagad ni Balagtas for fiction in English by the Union ng mga Manunulat sa Pilipinas. Batacan's second book, Accidents Happen, a collection of previously published but revised short stories, was published in March this year by Soho Press. She is currently working on several projects, including a novel, a screenplay, and a book of food essays. Everyone, let's give a round of applause once again for 𝗩𝗶𝘁𝗀𝗃.
Thank you very much. I'm really very happy, very honored to be here today to talk about writing, and specifically about writing crime fiction, which is something that's very close to my heart. Now, in the decades since Smaller and Smaller Circles first came out, there's been a bit of a blossoming of Pinoy crime fiction from writers like sina Charleston Ong, Mia Manansala, Randy Ribay, Dada Felix, and there are several others, including I understand there are also small groups of aspiring crime fiction writers who they hold workshops. They have begun publishing their own work, and that's for me very encouraging. Kasi I think our society needs crime fiction. So I think Philippine society especially needs the kind of crime fiction that reflects and interrogates the realities and injustices and inequities that are present in the country and the milieu where we live. So I'll preface anything I say here with 2 admissions. First of all, that ako mismo na I'm still learning. Hindi ako pumunta sa mga event na to bilang expert on anything except my own work, and even that medyo kailangan ko pa ring pag-aralan ng mabuti yung sarili kong trabaho. I bring only my life experience, my experience of my own writing and my own reading, which I hope may be of some use to people who want to write in the same genre that I write in. And second admission is that I have a fondness for a particular kind of crime fiction, no? So, ang gusto ko talaga na binabasa yung crime fiction that is rooted in place and sometimes in time, but always in the society that the writer lives in. So, anong ibig sabihin nun? For me, ibig sabihin nun, societies are messy, no? Not always in societies, especially in Asian societies, in Middle Eastern societies, not always do you get yung mga tidy resolution to crime, no? Very often, yung walang malinis na resolution o solusyon sa krimen. And this is something that I'll come back to later, no? One thing that I have come to realize from talking to this whole month, we've been having not just book events but also parang mga mini workshops with both writers who are already writing and aspiring crime fiction writers. And one of the things na parang na madalas na nababanggit sa akin or nakukuha ko from the way when we exchange views is that mahirap magsulat ng Pinoy crime fiction because ang hirap to find a plausible na detective or a plausible na police, no? So when all of us talk about hindi natin sinabi yon the reality is that when you say may nakaikwentro ko na police, no, our reaction is not one of confidence, our reaction is not one of relief, no, it's more wariness, it's more fear, no. So it's hard to put our trust both as citizens and also as readers, no. It's hard to put our trust in a Pinoy policeman, no. Kung makahanap ka man, it's usually a rare good egg, no. And hindi ko naman nilalahat, no, pero it's whether it's a perception or whether it's a stereotype that is based in reality, yun ang milyon natin na pag tinigil ka ng police in the middle of the night while you're driving down the road, hindi ka happy, di ba? Parang anong mangyayari sa akin, no? So it does not inspire confidence or relief. So since my second book, itong Accidents Happen, came out, I've been working on this book tour these last few weeks, giving these free workshops on what I hope is a useful toolbox. No, I call it a toolbox for Filipino writers who want to write crime fiction that is true to our lived experience as Filipinos, no? So, isa dun sa mga tools that I have found useful. Initially, I said I thought I would call it setting as a character in crime fiction. But actually, hihiram ako sa kaibigan ko na si John Labella. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's a Filipino poet, a literary scholar, and also a very good friend of mine. A few years ago, he wrote this paper, nodes, parang the nodes of the labyrinth in smaller and smaller circles. No, so he talks about both the city and the crime novel as a kind of labyrinth. No, so parang siya yung tipong with its landfills and slums in some turns, and then yung mga shiny high rises and malls and condos in some terms. So these spaces in the labyrinth often coincide with a kind of mental space, no? So when we talk about setting in Philippine crime fiction, we don't just talk about yung lugar mismo, Quezon City, BGC, Santa Ana, or whatever, but we're talking also of a mental, a social, a cultural, a political space that coincides with the nodes of that labyrinth, no? So the writer, it's been said many times that to understand a city, you must read its crime fiction, no? So yung writer, there's a writer called Justin Peacock. He once wrote, "We are living in a golden age of the social novel. However, it has gone largely unnoticed by the critical establishment because it is taking place almost exclusively within the crime novel." Ano ibig sabihin niya nun? Maraming literature, different kinds of literature that yun ang napagtutuunan ng pansin ng mga academic scholars and literary scholars, pero yung genre of crime writing, crime fiction, it's often thought of and it's often thought of as pulp, no? It's something parang airport reading. It's something you read for thrills and for fun, but actually, maraming mga issue at kontrobersya na tinatackle inside of crime novels that may not always be found in what I guess, I don't know, I'm not a literary scholar, but is it literary fiction or the kind of mainstream fiction, no? So as I mentioned later, mentioned earlier, I mean, yung labyrinth exists in the physical space as well as it's mirrored in the economic, in the labyrinth of economic exclusion, of social injustice, of corruption, and political accommodation in the spaces of power. So there's an organization, hindi lang siya basta sala-salabat, no? Even if you navigate our physical labyrinth in Metro Manila, may organization yan, even if it looks chaotic, no? And in the same way, there is a kind of organization in the labyrinth of the mind, no? And that comes from our shared history. In crime fiction, we often see how the history that exists under the surface of the physical space bleeds into the work, no? And the crime exists as a fracture of that physical space, of that organization, no? So another tool that I've been talking about is that when you write crime fiction, the backstories matter. The backstories of your characters matter. So I tend to write mahahaba at detalyadong backstory, even if yung backstory doesn't make it to the page. So, and sometimes it only makes it to the page as an tawag nila ngayon Easter egg, no? For example, one thing that I've been waiting for people to ask me about is, bakit yung mga kapatid ni Sáenz hindi niya kamukha? No. So, Easter egg yon, and it goes back to his own personal history, which we didn't deal with. I didn't really deal with a lot in smaller and smaller circles. So these personal histories are the building blocks of your characters, and they actually determine how these characters will act in given situations. And I always say in itong title story nitong Accidents Happen, there are no accidents. Every major act that happens has been decided and deliberated and is premeditated. Even when a character or a person in real life acts impulsively, there is often a logic to the action that is directly traceable to that personal history, even if the person himself is not always aware of that. So the other two tools in the toolbox is what I like to call the crime behind the crime, or in shorthand, ito yung what I call the machine. No? So very often we talk about the crime in crime fiction as yun nga, the fracture within the space, no, the physical and the mental and the social space. Yung fracture na yun is actually, I guess you can refer to it as the primary crime, no? So there's a primary crime, there's a death, there's a body that turns up somewhere, and there's often mga secondary crimes, whether it's a cover-up, whether it's putting the wrong person in jail. Madalas tayo yan, di ba? Yung pinaparada pa ng mga opisyal, ng mga pulis. Oh, ito yung suspect. Ganun. And very often, just as often as not, hindi sila yung gumawa. Pero because merong imperative of showing that you have made progress, ito ipaparada before the media or reporters na ito nakuha namin yung criminal. So yun yung what I would say the crime after the crime. But behind the crimes, there is a larger crime that's happening, no? So for example, in circles, there are so many sort of the machine of the crime is referring to the larger structures, the larger systems that keep people poor, that prevent people from attaining justice, that prevent people from doing the right thing, no? So maraming officials na in my stories who want to do the right thing but are hampered, whether it's by the laws of that they're asked to enforce, or most especially by the mindsets. Kasi for those of us who have worked in government agencies or law enforcement agencies, malakas yung pull ng organizational ethos na pag hindi ka tumatanggap, for example, ng bribe, killjoy ka. Pare naman, bakit naman parang you're making us look bad, no? So yung ano na, I remember, and I'm not gonna name the network, but I used to work for quite a few TV networks back in the day dito sa Pilipinas, no? And sometimes pupunta ka ng magko-cover ka, lalo na pag election season, tapos merong mga envelope na umiikot. Wala akong pake. I was always very anxious na producer or correspondent. So, ang focus ko lagi is nakuha na ba natin yung picture or nakuha na ba natin yung facts or whatever. Tapos pagdating ko sa crew cab, sasabihin sa akin ng ma'am, may natanggap ka ba? Na ano? Sabi, press kit? Hindi ma'am, envelope o ano. Ha? Wala ako natanggap. So I used to wonder bakit minsan cold ang either cameraman or driver or researcher. They were cold with me. And first it was apparent na they thought I had kept whatever was in the envelope for myself. And then it became worse. The worst was they realized I was not accepting. So parang, not only was I not keeping it for myself, but I was not accepting to begin with. So parang, ito na yung malaking structure behind what seemingly a small incident or a minor situation na mayroon pala talagang gumagalaw sa likod nung insidente or sa likod ng isang krimen na very often we take it for granted as part of the background hum of our lives, of our daily lives, whether and I like to refer to these as yung mga everyday violences, no, the violence of not being able to move easily and freely within our city, the violence of when we try to leave the country, akala mo kompleto na lahat ng papeles mo, naayos mo na lahat ng documents and all, tapos bigla kang, saan ang yearbook mo? Oo. Saan ang diploma ng nanay at tatay mo? Yung parang, patay na po sila. Hindi ibig sabihin po ba nito hindi ako offloaded ka? These arbitrary restrictions that are imposed on our movement as people, no? There's also the everyday violence and of women who are unable to access birth control. No, and I always keep going back. I don't know if this must be the 5th or 6th time that I've said this. This Rappler story of that came out around the time of the RH bill deliberations. Na a woman who has nag-profile sila ng woman who has had 20 children in as many years, no? So this is part of the toolbox that I've been talking about with young crime writers, aspiring crime writers, that they can use, no, when they try to write Pinoy crime fiction.
Thank you so much, Ma'am FPH Batacan. I really do find that compelling, what you were able to share, because I feel like in our pop culture now, there really has been a boom of the interest in crime fiction. So many people are following, reading things about crime. But at the same time, there is a part about myself, especially with the last bit that Ma'am shared, no, as a woman, that I kind of want to avoid crime fiction. And now I'm realizing why. Because it's too real, diba? Because we're faced to confront our harsh realities, as you were saying, this everyday violence and the layers of injustice that we're confronted with here in the Philippines, especially. So I think it's so important that we're really nurturing, or Ma'am is really nurturing, the future crime fiction writers of our time to expose more layers of injustices dito sa Pilipinas. Maraming salamat once again. And I'm sure we have so many questions and sentiments that we'd like to engage with. But before that, we'll move on to our next discussant. I'll now introduce her. Ma'am Monica Macansantos is the author of the essay collection Returning to My Father's Kitchen, published by Curbstone Northwestern University Press this 2025, and the story collection Love and Other Rituals. She was recently a 2024 to 2025 Shearing Fellow with UNLV's Black Mountain Institute in Las Vegas, and is an incoming Marguerite and Lamar Smith Fellow with the Carson McCullers Center in Columbus, Georgia. Her work has appeared in Colorado Review, the Hopkins Review, Bennington Review, LitHub, and River Styx, among others, and has been recognized with residencies at Hedgebrook, the Kimmel Harding Nelson Center for the Arts, and the iPark Foundation, the Story Knife Writers Retreat, and Monson Arts. She holds an MFA in writing from the University of Texas at Austin Mitchener Center for Writers and a PhD in creative writing from the Victoria University of Wellington. Everyone, let's give a round of applause for Monica Macansantos.
Can you hear me? Okay. Magandang umaga sa inyo. Thank you for coming. We have a full house today. I'm very grateful to see you here this morning. I'm grateful to be sharing the stage with these lovely, talented women. I'm in awe, of course. Ito po ang libro ko. It looks like this. It came out last month, so unfortunately, wala pang kopya sa Pilipinas. But this was published last May 15th by Northwestern University Press in Chicago. It's an essay collection about, well, revolving around the very sudden and unexpected death of my father, the poet 𝗪𝗪 Macansantos. I can see some of his friends here in the audience. I'm grateful that you showed up this morning to talk about my dad and my work. So I come from a background of fiction. So I turned to nonfiction after my father's passing because, well, at the time I was living in New Zealand. I was doing a PhD in creative writing. So I was working on a novel about martial law, hindi pa na-publish, unfortunately. But anyway, I was working on that when he died very suddenly. And I thought, because I felt that the rug was pulled from underneath me very violently, I felt that I didn't have the strength to write again. And at the same time, I kept remembering what he told to me when I was much younger as a writer, that like, no matter what, you have to keep writing, no matter what happens. And I felt that I was honoring him by forcing myself to get back on the writing horse. And at first, it was challenging for me to write fiction. And now I realize that the reason for that was that, like, when you write fiction, you turn outwards. You write about other people. You write about their struggles. And at the time, I didn't have the strength to think about other people. I just wanted to think about my grief and to honor that. And nonfiction gave me a vehicle for that. So who among you are essay writers here? Meron naman iilan. Yeah, so you might have that experience of using the essay form to confront certain parts of your personal history or personal experience or family history that bothers you. And by doing so, you end up confronting parts of yourself that you otherwise wouldn't have wanted to confront. Because it's hard to write about yourself, and because it's hard to be honest about yourself. So I was a little nervous putting out this essay collection because, like, all of me is, not all of me, but many, like, tender parts of me are out here in this essay collection. But now, I guess it's all right to embrace being shameless. So, yeah. So at first, when I was writing, like, the first essays in this book, I'd already written some essays before my father's passing, and these, when I did this, it was also to confront personal history and to think about memories that bothered me, that stayed with me, and I wanted to figure out why these memories lingered with me. So there's an essay here about a childhood friend in Delaware where I spent part of my childhood, so my friend was part of the foster care system, tapos he disappeared. Kuminsan yung image natin ng Amerika na napakaganda ng buhay dun, pero there are a lot of people who struggle, and my friend was one of those people. So he disappeared into the foster care system, and we kept wondering where he was or how he was doing. So there was an essay a short essay about him in here, and there was also an essay about like that I really wanted to write about my memories of the Philippine literary community and my coming of age as a writer, which I wrote when my father was still alive, and my father was very happy about that piece. So after he died, like I already like tested my hand with nonfiction, and I felt that maybe I can write a few more essays to think about his passing and about my relationship with home, because like after his passing, like I came home to the Philippines to attend his wake and funeral, and people kept telling me, instead of asking me how I was doing, they'd tell me, "Take care of your mom, huh?" Which is all right. I mean, I was obviously going to take care of my mother who was grieving. Like both of us were grieving, and we were going to take care of each other. But I also felt that my grief was erased, and I felt that I was being erased by people's well-meaning remarks. So the essay form enabled me to make my grief visible and make myself visible, and at the same time to process my very complicated relationship with my homeland. And I guess like a lot of you here can relate to that kasi lahat tayo nabuwisit sa Pilipinas kung minsan. Pero in my case, I felt that like as a woman, I felt that my personhood and my independence was recognized more in Western society than in the Philippines, where I was like subservient to the roles I occupied as daughter, as woman. So I ended up writing more essays about my relationship with home and my relationship with the different places I've called home. And my hometown is Baguio, and I have a love-hate relationship with it. And the different places that the writing life have taken me to, such as Austin, Texas, or Wellington, New Zealand, or, well, right now, most recently, Las Vegas. These are places that I've come to call home, and I've had complicated relationships with all of them. So anyway, before I proceed, I'll read an excerpt from one of the essays in this collection, just to give you a sense of what this book is about. So, page 91. So here's me thinking about having to leave New Zealand and the difficulties of leaving. Eastbourne, Wellington. A hush descends on the water, soaking through the darkness that has wrapped around me like a shawl. I bunch my shoulders inside my puffer jacket, wondering if I should have taken the 5 p.m. ferry back to the city instead of waiting for evening to completely seep through what is left of the afternoon. I am alone at the terminal, waiting for the 6 p.m. ferry, doubt coursing through my shivering body as I stare into the water's glimmering surface. Could there really be a 6 p.m. trip out of Eastbourne when I'm the only one waiting for it? The empty pier exposes me to the briny wind, and for a fleeting moment, I am convinced that I am dreaming, which allows me to believe that ferry is sailing toward me in the dark, journeying across the bay for its sole passenger. My chin sinks into the soft new scarf I bought for myself just an hour before, feeling my neck grow warm inside its light and silky fabric. When I first saw it, looped around a coat's hanger neck, inside a gift shop near the harbor, I was drawn to the warmth of its burnt orange hue. But after my fingers luxuriated in its softness, I looked at the price tag and hesitated. 30 New Zealand dollars was a lot of money for someone who had just defended her PhD thesis and was no longer receiving a graduate stipend. The kind shopkeeper who puttered around me as I browsed explained that the scarf was made of wool and possum fur, which was what made it both warm and soft. Unable to brush aside her gentle charm, I told her I'd think about it. And when she said, "That's all right," I could sense that I'd be coming back. Afterward, I found myself tightening the fringed acrylic scarf around my neck as I walked around the bay, the late afternoon wind whipping around my neck, slipping through the scarf's flimsy threads. Turning and walking to the other end of the bay, I lifted my scarf to my chin, following street signs that pointed me toward one of Catherine Mansfield's many childhood homes. I pressed on in the deepening dusk, my throat growing sore and my nose dribbling, as I searched for a house whose marker was nowhere to be found. "It's a beautiful scarf," the woman said when I returned to her shop just before closing. "You can adjust the way it loops around your neck for any occasion." "It's warmer too," I reassure myself, fingering its dense weave as I wait for the 6 p.m. ferry. 𝗪𝗡 Island looms large and close, so different from the comforting, faraway speck it is when seen from the city. The only time I'd set foot on the island was with Vincent, who doled out grand but impossible promises while we ate our packed lunch. Now he is gone, and I am about to leave New Zealand for good. The city's faraway glow casts its soft net over the island, and I ask myself if this is the end, if it's truly time for me to go. A speck of light encircles 𝗪𝗡, and soon the light is sailing in my direction, assuming the outlines of a boat as it approaches. It cleaves through the silence with its mechanical hum, and then it is bobbing up and down beside me, disgorging its passengers, some carrying briefcases, some marching down the wooden walkway with headphones cupped around their ears. I wait for the ferry to empty out, and then I step into its glowing interior alone. The conductor nods at me when I take my seat and then slides the door closed. All right. So, thank you. So I just have 5 minutes left. I guess I'll talk about my journey in getting this book published. Ewan ko lang how it is in the Philippines. I think it's easier to get essay collections published in the Philippines, but in the US, where I decided to get this published, it's kind of hard to get essays collections published because, as agents and some publishers will tell you, essay collections are a tough sell. And I think it's mainly because nonfiction is tough, and also because with essay collections, as opposed to memoirs, you have multiple entry points. So you're not sustaining your reader's attention for an extended period of time. You have to catch your attention and catch your attention again. Same with short story collections, but with essay collections, they're more like meditations, like where you have to actively think. You're not just like going with the flow of the narrative. You're like actually like engaging in a conversation. So what happened was that during the pandemic, I was stuck at home with my mom in Baguio, and I realized that the essays I'd been writing were coming together to form an essay collection. So there were some essays in this collection that I wrote specifically to tie the essay collection together, like the title essay of this collection, Returning to My Father's Kitchen, and several essays about his writing and about his relationship with Baguio. There was also an essay I wrote about tango, learning to tango in New Zealand, and confronting the generational trauma of my family and my grandparents in Zamboanga, who were like tango champions before the Second World War. So anyway, it came together eventually, and I tried to look for a literary agent, and all of them said, "We love your writing, but essay collections are a tough sell." And some people suggested that I turn this into a memoir. I just felt that wasn't right for a memoir at this point. So I started submitting it to university presses, and one of them, Northwestern University Press, responded very quickly. So thankfully, 𝗪𝗡 𝗪𝗡, who's my fairy godmother, took on this essay collection, and now it is here, existing in the world. So anyway, if you're interested, there's a QR code po sa labas. Pwede nyo pong i-scan. Tapos that will take you to my publisher's website and they ship to the Philippines. Unfortunately, wala pang kopya sa Pilipinas. And also, I can, siguro may isip nyo, paano ko naman isa-sign and what's the point? But like, I have signed book plates. I can give them to you if you purchase the book. So thank you very much.
Maraming salamat, Miss Monica Macansantos. And I think it's so valuable today that we really get to see a variety of genres from our writers today and also understand the variety of challenges that come with it, no? From crime fiction and of course, this essay and more nonfiction type of writing. And what I also found very interesting is this idea of confrontations that you have in the writing process, no? Confronting realities, but also confronting your emotions and yourself, diba? It feels so difficult and harrowing, but also very aspirational that you're able to confront yourself and really come face to face with these kinds of realities and real pieces of yourself. So thank you so much for your sharing. And I think it's also a perfect segue now to our next writer, as she also introduces to us a new variety of a genre and also, you know, a personal look at her writing. Our next author is Angela Gabrielle Fabunan. She's the author of Young Enough to Play, published by the University of the Philippines Press in 2022. She was born in the Philippines and raised in New York. She has attained a BA in English and American Literature from Bowdoin College in Maine, USA, and an MA in Creative Writing at the University of the Philippines, Diliman. She has been a recipient of the Rutan Grant for Theater in 2010, as well as the Gibbons Fellowship in 2011. She was a fellow of the Diliman University National Writers Workshop for Poetry in 2015 and was the recipient of the Don Carlos Palanca Memorial Award for Poetry in 2016. She was also the recipient of the Amelia La Peña Bonifacio Literary Award for Poetry in 2018. She has published in numerous publications in the Philippines and abroad. She was a poetry mentor for the Association of Writers and Poets, or AWP, in 2024, and is an editor at Palette Poetry. Her first poetry collection, now out of print, The Sea That Beckoned, was published by Platypus Press in 2019. She currently teaches at the Department of English and Literature at Diliman University. Everyone, let's give a round of applause for Angela Gabrielle Fabunan.
Thanks, Gabby, for that introduction. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone who's up here and over here, our friends. I hope you can indulge me because I prepared something. I'm not good at public speaking, so I'll just read from my text here. So, oh, and I want to give a shout out to my department at Diliman University because I think they're having a department meeting right now. I'm sorry to miss that. Okay, so I'll begin now. A prominent but very sweet poet once told me, "Women are muses, not poets," he said, hearkening back to the Greeks. And then he told me, "Paano yan? You're writing love poetry. Who will be your muse?" And then after a moment, he said, "I guess you can write about yourself. You can be your own muse." So, sir, you know, I've had many muses, my own self included. No, so today I really want to talk to you about love in our world where it seems so foreign. I wrote a book 3 years ago called Young Enough to Play. To talk about this book today is to acknowledge the labor of women writers across the world who write down love. So there was Sylvia Plath, an American mid-century, writing down mad girls' love songs. There was Anais Nin in avant-garde France writing love in her diary. There was 𝗪𝚢 Siddall, model and muse of the pre-Raphaelite painters in England, who wrote her own poems, but whose face survives her words in the famous painting by John Everett Millay, na Ophelia. In India is Anandita Singh Gupta, who writes, quote, "I could have loved you or fancied the sea as if there was a choice in it." And here there was Maningning Miklat, for whom writing was, quote, "drifting into a love net of poems." So these are only fragments of the art and the stories of the multitude of women who have written down love. Indeed, as a woman, to write love is as if it is a given. Because we are women, we have to write about love or not write at all and be simply muses. That shouldn't be, no. Some of us write down love because we are entangled in nets of power. Certainly, that's why I started writing about my obsessions. But some of us, the best among us, write love as an act of courage. I'm still learning how to do that now. It's so easy to write poems of hate, trauma, and sadness, especially in this difficult world we live in, but it's harder to write from love's true affirmation. And it all becomes more difficult when women writers are often relegated to the spaces of love making, love musings, and love poetry writing, especially women who don't particularly write that way. There seems to be a problem in how our society views women writing love poems. But there is no other choice, at least for me. Love is the necessity of this day and age, as it has been for poetry since the beginning of time. Moreover, there is something we have inherited from the English Romantic tradition that frames the female voice as utterances of someone swept away by circumstance, by emotion, and by her own biology. In Young Enough to Play, I didn't want to be typecast in the mode of a muse, so I took my own power in my hands as a poet. I wrote my own versions of love poetry in the forms I knew. So my formal experiments want to provide a place for a more critical poetry practice, one that provides not simply the face of resistance, but the very structure of it. The histories of poetic forms as predominantly Western, male, and white provide a space in which resistance might happen in the eye of the storm. I purposefully don't write forms in the way that strict forms are meant to be written. These shadow forms in Young Enough to Play, almost sonnets, the beginnings of a pantoum, or a villanelle without rhyme, becomes a backdrop for a narrative of love from the woman's perspective to emerge. As an example of these incomplete formal poems now, I wrote the pseudo-sonnet Still Water, which I'll recite later, which is a play on the usual depictions of lover and beloved, the water in the pool becoming a place for reflection to occur. In a contemporary Philippines, I'm still wrestling with forms, not as a starting point for propagating a certain ideology, but as a way to mold them into the narratives I really want to write the truth about. Further, the question has occurred to me to look at these same archetypes of romantic love within the Philippine tradition, and I find the opposite. I find so many strong women, like the women who are up here with me, no? Voices from the past to the present, who come from places of efficacy and agency and who are unafraid. Truth then becomes a way of seeing things not for what is imagined, but for what they are. Young Enough to Play frames the Filipina in love, yes, but it also attempts to show a form of resistance, an almost way out of love through the act of writing. Through poetry, we can contemplate our muses, even ourselves included, to free love from the chains of suffering and the grip of nostalgia and regret. There is a problem indeed with love poetry, but with the help of women writers from centuries past until now, we can respond to this problem through a certain slant of light, a truth that emerges in the wrestling with this dilemma through writing. So that's all. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and I find that so interesting now as we start to really weave together all of the insights from our writers, how we can see really the power of everybody, like you have said, the power of everybody here with me in this panel today. You know, power in taking back these roles of lovers, of daughters, sisters, of people who are usually marginalized in society, women who are victim of crimes, right? But this time, as a writer who has their own agency to create their own narrative, you're really able to create something special with what you have written. Thank you so much for that sharing. And that leads me now to another role that we can interrogate with our last writer for today, the OFW, di ba po? So now to introduce our next writer, 𝗩𝗏𝗃𝗃 is a former OFW and a broadcast media professional. She lived and worked in Hong Kong and Dubai for over 2 decades, from 1996 to 2018. In 2019, she settled back in Manila alongside her husband and 2 cats. When she's not weaving spine-chilling stories, Jet unleashes her creative energy as an events creative in Manila, Philippines. Her inaugural literary venture, The Secret Lives of OFWs, opens a new chapter in her storytelling journey. Everyone, let's give a round of applause for Jet Tagasa.
Hello po, thank you po. May visual aids ako. So I'm Jet. This is my book. It's my first book. I started writing it in like 2017, 2018 when I was working in Dubai as the job is called a producer, but really I did trailers. I did TV trailers for networks. So specifically sa Dubai, I worked for a broadcasting network called MBC, the Middle East Broadcasting Corporation. So anyhow, in 2019, I settled back nga dito sa Pilipinas. And then from then on, I was writing different short stories. That is now the collection of this book. In 2023, syempre after nung, wala na palang pandemic, normal na naman yung buhay, I started thinking about my book again. Actually, I was working during the pandemic, so hindi ko napag-isipan na, I have this book, I should really be doing something about it. I did a podcast. It's a true crime podcast po because I'm very interested in true crime. For me, it's therapy. I guess that's a thing for women. I relax with true crime. So I did it for a year. And then I thought back to my book and was thinking, self-publish ko ba siya? Anong mang gagawin ko? And then I realized I actually got a lot of traction and interest with my podcast. So I was thinking, baka gawin ko na lang siyang podcast kasi nga iba't ibang storya siya. But then my sister's boyfriend, who is 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, I don't know if you know him. Okay. He got his book published by Penguin Random House, Southeast Asia. Tapos, he knows my work and he's read some of my short stories. Tapos sabi niya, ba't di mo ipadala sa Penguin Random House? Sabi ko, hindi naman ako katulad mo, no? Blah, blah, blah. Wala akong background, hindi ako literal. Kasi nga, I was in broadcast media. Sabi, padala mo lang, anong mawawala sa'yo? So I sent it with a pitch deck. So it's not just a manuscript. It's also a kind of like pitching for a movie. So I guess that's where my broadcast media background kind of helped. Pero ang sabi dun sa website nila, pag wala kang narinig sa amin in 6 months, hindi kami interesado. A year later, they sent me an email. Hindi ako nag-follow up, nothing. A year later, they sent me an email saying, "Hi, is this book still available?" I nearly fell off my chair. Right. So balik po muna tayo sa earlier. So I'm just gonna go briefly into the book. Balik po muna tayo dyan. Wag muna dyan. Isa pa po. Okay, so the book is a collection of 8 stories about 8 of OFWs who happen to be Philippine mythological creatures. So there's the part-timer, the nurse, the seafarer, the cook, the waiter, the beauty technician, the balikbayan, and the domestic helper. All of these OFWs, all of these stories happen in different countries. Right. So if you go to the next, so ang pinaka-over, I guess, theme is astigin talaga mga OFW. So, anong sikreto para maging OFW ka? A little bit literal, syempre sa libro, literal killer instincts. Pero ano rin, you need to be asigin talaga for you to move to another country, to to live there. And there's so many things that you have to deal with that it is really, really very challenging. So then if we go to the next one, ako po nga yan. Those are the people that I worked with. I worked in Dubai. I started working in Hong Kong first. I worked for Star TV, and then I worked for Cartoon Network before nga moving to Dubai. Ngayon, events creative na ako. So I really don't have anything, any other thing to say about my book. Maybe after I read an excerpt, maybe if you want to ask me any questions, then I can explain a little bit more about my process if you want. But if you want to connect with me, next deck po. Oh, yun, how it started. Ayan pala, may guide pala ako. Kaya pala ako nag-visual aid. Okay, paano nga ba nagsimula? How did I start? It started with rage. It seemed like when I started writing this book, there was an OFW dying at the hands of their employer or while they were overseas. I didn't know how to process my anger at the injustice, at the hopelessness. Wala akong magawa. And I feel really emotional about it because when you're there, a lot of the OFW you meet, they don't work there for themselves. It's for their families. Like, hindi nila sabihin, nag-OFW ko kasi gusto ko ng bagong bag, gusto ko ng bagong sapatos. It's for their families. So it really, really breaks my heart, the suffering that they endure just so they can provide for their families. And then, to top it all off, pag umuwi sila, you don't see that. They don't want to share that with you. Because they just want to be happy. They're working so hard. Pag umuwi sila, of course, they don't want the negative. They just want the positive. And for a lot of the families of OFWs, yun na yung nakikita nila na kainan sa labas, the whole gang goes, tas, everyone has something new. So that's what they experience. So for me, writing these stories is a bit of a way to process that rage. And then by using Philippine mythological creatures, it's also a way of adding power to the weakness and the hopelessness to change the narrative somehow. That hindi lang sila ganito. There's power in what they experience. Sorry, I'm getting really emotional over it. I don't know. Anyhow, so that's me. That's how this book came about. And then if you go to the next one, this is socials ko, a little bit of a marketing. Diyan po ako sa Facebook, diyan po ako sa Insta. Yan yung picture ko sa TikTok kasi hindi ko alam kung paano mag-TikTok. Para sa akin, napakamahiwaga niya. Kaya kung marunong kayo, please get in touch with me because apparently everyone's on TikTok right now and that's how you sell books. So, yun lang po sa akin.
Thank you so much, Miss Jet Tagasa. And really, I'm so inspired to hear the emotions behind the process that you have in writing this book. And even with all our discussions today, about these emotions of rage, of grief, of love, of thrill, mystery, all of the things that we can really get from these different literary works. And I'm sure we'll be able to unpack more, as you said, once we now engage in our discussion. So with that, with everybody sharing, thank you once again for your thoughts. And we will now open the floor to your sentiments, your questions, your thoughts for our writers and authors today. So if you have any questions, you can just raise your hand. All right. Okay, because I'm sure there are a lot of questions, curiosities, kasi ang dami na pag-usapan on, their arduous journey of writing, but also the arduous journey of publishing, narinig din natin from our writers, while of course, always navigating this journey of ourselves as women at the same time. So there's so many things that we can learn about. So again, if you have questions, you can just raise your hand.
Kasi walang magtatanong ako. this is addressed to all speakers because this is about women writing. What is it about peculiar about being, or maybe inappropriate and peculiar? What is it about being a woman that you bring into your specific genre? I mean, of course, some of you have touched on this earlier, like Miss Angie, no? Pero gusto ko pa ring makita dahil sa tingin ko ang panitikan ngayon ay pa rin merong konting advantage, sabihin na natin, ang mga kabilang gender or ano. But what is it about being a woman that you think enriches your writing or makes it different, or in fact helps in your readers confront their humanity, not only their womanhood? I hope that's clear. I don't know.
Siguro po, I'll preface this by talking a little bit about yung experience po namin sa mga recent na pitch workshops that I have been conducting, no? So, ang nangyayari po is in-invite namin yung mga gustong sumulat ng crime fiction to send us a short pitch, less than 200 words, talking about ano yung storya na gusto nilang isulat, tapos ano yung stakes, ano yung crime, ano yung sino yung central character nila, no? Hindi naman po sa walang yung parang dinidisparage yung trabaho ng mga lalaki na nagpadala ng pitch, no? Pero ang katunayan po, karamihan nung mga nagpadala ng yung solid na pitch na pwede nang yung upuan mo na, isulat mo na. Yung buo, cohesive, malinaw yung progression, were from women. And I think this is partly because as women, we tend to look at our daily lives as isang kabuuan, no? Men, and I've also observed this of the men in my life, my father, family members na ano, pag sinabi mo halimbawa, gawan mo ng baon yung mga bata, no? Gagawa nila ng baon, sandwich, kuha silang tinapay, may peanut butter. Kung wala yung mga elements na yon, sorry na lang, no? Sige, bili ka na lang sa canteen, or daan na lang, drive-through na lang tayo sa Jollibee. Whereas, and this is maybe an oversimplification, pero ito yung role ng kababaihan. Ang role ng kababaihan is not just to look at gagawan ko ng baon yung mga bata for school tomorrow. Ang role ng kababaihan may tinapay pa ba tayo? Anong palaman? Yung mga bata ba allergic sa ganito? Anong kailangang bilhin para magkaroon sila ng baon bukas? Sino ang ayaw ng peanut butter at sino ang ayaw ng egg salad or whatever, no? So we're trained to think in not just one direction, not just one dimension, but we have to consider so many other factors, no? Whereas and ang nangyayari is these fall on our shoulders almost by default, no? So bilang manunulat, at least of my genre, crime fiction, karamihan dun sa mga pitches that we discussed, I would say 90% galing sa babae. Kasi malinaw na yung what I was talking about earlier, na This is the primary crime, but this is the crime behind the crime. This is the machine. Nakikita nila yung kabuuan. Whereas karamihan ng mga pitch from men, and again, it's I'm not generalizing. I'm just talking from my experience with conducting these workshops. No, karamihan very linear. Parang ito yung krimen, ito yung progression, ito yung parang in other words, you can almost plot the points on a single line. Yung mga pitch ng babae, and like one great example is one pitch that we got from our event sa podium. 9-word pitch. Janitorial staff at Pogo wants to escape, something like that. No, it's like yung kay Ernest Hemingway ba yun, yung for sale baby shoes never worn. No, it's just 8 or 9 words, pero napakayaman with possibilities. No, so I think that is one advantage of women, is that we are overburdened. We have the burden of always having to look at the big picture in our daily lives, and we bring that to the writing.
That was such an interesting observation po about women, that we prioritize other people's needs over our own needs, and we think about other people over ourselves. And I think isa yun sa parang unique perspective ng mga kababaihan na manunulat, that we're empathetic, and at the same time, because we're conditioned to serve other people, society is also conditioned to believe that they can depend on us for everything. And because of that, I think that we're better, or no, not necessarily, but like we're good at assessing relationships, because we move in the world in relation to other people. Yeah, and I'm also thinking about how, as a nonfiction writer, I am as a woman, or at least like nonfiction taught me to be in touch with my feelings, and this is something that men are conditioned not to do. Men are conditioned to be tough, and I think that, yeah, that's part of toxic masculinist culture. But anyway, yeah, like parang parati kong naiisip si Lady Murasaki whenever we talk about women's literature, and how she was the first novelist in history, I believe, and how she was so good at assessing relationships, and how people stood in like the Japanese courts. So yeah, anyway, like
Okay, for me, unbiased ako ha, kasi, I am a woman. So, ultimately, biased talaga ako. So I think, same with me, yung concerns of women's writing is what really invigorates me. I feel as if, women are community builders at the same time that they are family builders, and in a time when women's bodies are policed very much, I think that the concerns of women's writing is about not only about their own bodies, but the whole world as a body, right? The whole world as a community. So, ayun, I don't know, parang mas may tendency akong tumingin sa women's writing rather than men's writing. I think preference then for me, but also social and political choice also.
Whenever people ask me about why do I think women writers make better writers, I always think back to this character in the show called Fleabag. Di ba si Fleabag pumunta siya sa bar, tapos may nakilala siyang babae doon. After nabasag niya na naman niya yung sculpture na ninakaw niya doon sa nanay niya o doon sa mistress nung tatay niya. Anyhow, na-meet niya, tapos they were talking about how women are such, well, for me, are make for good storytellers because we have this built-in pain. Childbirth, menstruation, high-heeled shoes. I feel like because of that, we are highly empathic creatures. We feel very deeply. And that allows us a very unique and rich interpretation of everybody's experiences. For me, that's why. So thank you, Fleabag.
Thank you so much to our women writers for really articulating, I think, a lot of what the women here today also understand intimately, right? That a lot of our identities and the things that we want to achieve might be in conflict already. So that I'm sure translates to the kind of writing and on the page as well. So do you have any other questions?
This one will be for Miss Batacan. As I sat down and I finished one of your short stories, the 𝗍𝗶𝘁𝗀𝗃, and when you mentioned that backstories matter even if they don't make it to the page, that really stuck out to me. I'd like to ask for your process when it came to you deciding on the personality of the woman. I'm not going to spoil much about it. Maybe others haven't read it, but how much of her personality did you leave out? Or how much about her character? And then maybe after that, for Miss Tagasa, I am absolutely in love with Philippine folklore and mythology. I would just love to know how you went about researching the different creatures that you included in your work. So, one creature. And which one would be your favorite?
Thank you. You're talking about the personality of the woman in the 𝗍𝗶𝘁𝗃, no? There was really a time where I was reflecting on the hidden labor, and it kind of touches a bit on my answer to the first question, no? The hidden labor, the invisible labor of women, no? That they run the household, they do this, they do that, and actually, I guess going back to what Jet said earlier, we also bear the emotional labor of even of our partners sometimes, no, and of our children, of our parents, the hidden. We bear not just our own pain, but the pain of others, no? So the story really centers on how this woman's pain is unseen. Her labor is unseen by the person she cares for the most, but it is seen by this inanimate object. So yun siguro yung one of the conceits nung kwento is that are there witnesses to our labor, to our lives, to our pain that we do not even know, so that was how the character was built up. That was how looking at all the many women in my life, from my grandmother to my mother to even myself, and friends and other women that who I know, who really it's almost like they are unseen. Sila yung engine na nagpapatakbo ng buhay ng mga tao sa paligid nila. Tanggalin mo yung engine, tas titigil yung buhay ng, life as they know it will end. But because the engine is always turning, nobody sees it, nobody notices it. And the only time you will notice it is when it stops working.
Siyempre, love na love ko mga Philippine mythological creatures. For me, parang sila Avengers na. So new Avengers, or at least them into the new Avengers. For research, I actually did a lot of online research. I'm sure if you guys are fans, merong the Aswang Project online. He's very good, even though hindi siya Pinoy. Pero ang dami ko nakuha doon. But I also did a lot of yeah, he's American, right? I think. Oh, Canadian, yeah. I went to the Heritage Library. Ang dami rin nilang resource doon. I actually, when my book was accepted by Penguin Random House, 5 lang siya actually. 5 short story lang siya. So I had to find other. There are a lot of those. 100%. Yep. Hello, ayun. Ayun, so oo, sa Heritage Library. Favorite character, kasi nag-research ako, actually, yung Oriol. One of my characters is an Oriol. So, actually, in my book, all of my characters are Bicolano. I'm from Bicol. Yes. So that short story is actually true crime then, based on a true crime. Right. So, yun, I love that because I found out about that character. I really didn't know about her character. So, para siyang Black Widow. Hindi naman natin kilala si Black Widow before nagkaroon ng pelikula, di ba? Alam lang natin yun, the big five, the Aswang, the Manananggal, pero hindi natin alam yun. So, when I found out about the Oriol, I thought it was very interesting. And then, obviously, this true crime aspect as well came into it. Thank you.
Maraming salamat for those answers and the questions. And we just have room for 2 more questions. So if you have a question, you can raise your hand here at the sa harap.
Hello. Okay, sige. So this is for Angela. Kasi I actually reread your poetry book this past week leading up to today. And I suppose it's a bit of a I'm asking it because I also write a lot of love poetry, and it's been hard to write at all, or even actually read, because love can be full of so much pain. And so my question is, you can answer this personally through a feminist lens, however, but how do you write love poetry in an empowering way after so much pain, heartbreak, trauma?
Hello. Okay. Ayan. I think that in Young Enough to Play, I really was grieving, no? And it was filled with a lot of pain, and I empathize with you as well, because a lot of good poetry comes from trauma, sadness, pain, grief, ganyan, longing, ganyan. But I think what I'm more my trajectory in writing now is towards healing, and not just healing in the kind of poetic sense, but myself as well, from and I think there is something to be said for again, like having an affirmation of love that isn't negative, that isn't not to say that grief is negative, but that's that a type of love that also heals, rather than breaks and doesn't affirm. So I'm navigating towards love poetry that does affirm, right? That does do something productive rather than something destructive. So I think we always have that choice as poets to either to destroy or to uplift, right? So.
Actually, along that same line, you were saying what we are capable of as writers, right? To do something positive or negative, or turn something into something negative into something positive from an experience. I'd like to bring that back also to the crime, writing crime fiction itch, because that was what struck me when I heard you when you were introducing your process. Actually, I'm curious about that. You mentioned earlier that most of Asian experience, at least the crimes that we have, are not really don't have tidy resolutions. Did I get you right the first time? Was there an effort on your part, because I haven't read the collection, but I have followed smaller and smaller circles as well as the film. Was there an effort or an attempt you felt, or pressure on your part to come up and neatly tie it in the end? And was that as much as it is a challenge of the work, is there that responsibility or burden you think for us to do precisely that in Philippine writing, especially given our times?
I think as a writer, I don't really allow myself to feel any pressure from anyone but myself. No, I've always been, I've always been kind of, I guess, in a way, a lone wolf as far as my writing is concerned. No, I've only ever participated in 2 fiction classes at saka elective pa yun. I'm not really, I wouldn't call myself a part of a product of any of the local writing, the Philippine writing schools. I'm not really, I've been to 2 writing workshops, but yung by the time na dumating na ako dun sa workshop na yon, medyo alam ko na kung ano yung gusto kong sulatin. So, at saka kung paano ko gustong sulatin. So, in terms of wanting a tidy resolution, I lived the life as an intelligence, a worker in the intelligence community. I've lived the life, and I know everything's messy. The agency where I used to, and I don't generally talk about what agency. So I have people coming up to me, were you with the NBI? Were you with this? Were you with that? And everyone's trying to guess. But, I have a duty of care because of the nature of the work na hindi ko pag-usapan. But I will tell you this, that the agency where I worked at, merong times na yung class confidential na folder, confidential, as in eyes only. Nakalagay lang siya sa isang tabi, tas ang protection lang niya, isang pulang unan. It's an sort of illustrative of how we value things like evidence collection, intelligence collection, processing, analysis, na yung by the time I was already writing the novel, yung gusto mo nang pag-usapan, the messiness and the ineptitude, the complacency, yun yung mga gusto kong ungkatin na I personally didn't see a tidy ending. So there was, in terms of pressure, I really don't listen to pressure. I don't give into it. I've always been kind of a little bit of a hermit when it comes to my writing. I read other people. I like what I like, and I'm basically deaf to outside pressures.
Maraming salamat. And I love that insight no on pressure, because I feel like especially nowadays in media there's so much pressure and expectations that come with representing women or being a woman in general. There's a polarizing conversations, right, about how we write about women also, but we can see from our writers here today who so generously shared their journeys and personal experiences that because they are very authentic in what they have written, that it's really just about their experiences as human beings, okay, primarily, and also about other experiences as women. So thank you once again to those who shared their questions, and of course to those who were able to share their thoughts and interests also for our writers' literary works. And there's really so much more that we can explore, I'm sure, which goes to show that this really has to be a continuing conversation for us about women, about women's works, even outside of this forum. But I'm sure the next part of our program will also be equally as exciting, because we will now hear a few excerpts from our authors today from their works. So we'll start same order na lang po siguro. Okay. Different order naman po para naman maiba. Yes, we'll start with, let's all give a round of applause for Miss Jet Tagasa.
Miss Batacan, I see you there. Okay, so this short story is called The Beauty Therapist from Dubai. Backstory, sa Dubai, halos lahat ng beauty technician doon, yun ang tawag sa kanila, ay Filipina. So nagpapa-manicure ako, pedicure, ganon. Kinikwentuhan nila ako ng mga story nila sa buhay, and a lot of them are obviously very lonely, a lot of them heartbroken o sawi. So, here goes. It dawned on Loida as she bent down between Gemma's legs that she had seen more of her client's bush than her own. Right now, though, this wasn't the reason behind her agitation. I need a Brazilian today, Gemma said to her with a giggle in her voice, then added, my papi is coming later, so you know what that means. Loida did know what that meant, and it filled her with rage. She felt it rise up her throat and flood her mouth with a bile of concentrated hate. She wanted to vomit on Gemma, to open her mouth as wide as she could so she could eject all the hurt that she was feeling right now, straight into Gemma's unwaxed pussy. Instead, she smiled. Yes, Brazilian. Full or half? He prefers the half look. Gemma smiled wider. Loida swallowed hard, responding with an of course while pushing her anger down until she felt it land like a rock deep in her gut. O, tapos na. Let's just see if the wax is nice and ready for you, okay? She said and turned towards her workstation. Loida closed her eyes, took a slow, deep breath, and checked on the consistency of the wax by stirring it around with a wooden popsicle stick. Concentrate on the work. Concentrate on the work. The words echoed in her head as she willed her anger to melt like the red wax with each stir, its color and thickness reminding her of the consistency of blood. The deep crimson helped her focus on her to-do list, the real work that needed to be done. It was enough to make her smile, and her hand steadied soon after that. I'm so glad you could come today. Gemma was lying down on her bed. Next to the workstation Loida had set up, she had the wax heating in a miniature slow cooker neatly placed beside other beauty equipment that she had taken from the main branch of the Pretty Woman Beauty Lounge, a one-stop beauty center where, according to the sign on the salon spelled saloon, everyone was committed to servicing the needs of Dubai's beauty-conscious women. Right now, Loida was committed to providing a special discounted beauty home service in the privacy of Gemma's room. She had made the offer to Gemma in secret after she had finished Gemma's mani-pedi just a few days ago, confident that the girl would not resist a bargain deal. Loida had learned a lot about Gemma in the months since she had come to the salon for her regular beauty treatments, even if at first she wasn't Gemma's preferred beautician. Then, one day, Loida was asked to wax Gemma's legs after her usual beauty therapist had called in sick, a case of food poisoning that 𝗠𝗲𝗱 had arranged. She had done her job with servile professionalism, of course, but it had sickened her to the core. In the end, however, it was worth the indignity. After that first session, 𝗠𝗲𝗱 had turned into Gemma's preferred beauty therapist. It was an impressive accomplishment in more ways than one, considering no less than 3 months ago, 𝗠𝗲𝗱 had known nothing about nail spas, removing bunions, or blow-drying hair. In training, 𝗠𝗲𝗱 had impressed her employer so much with her efficiency and enthusiasm that she was now servicing clients faster than most new hires. She discovered that the desire for revenge was a powerful motivator that way. She used it like fuel, a kind of liquid loathing running through her veins. Without it, she wouldn't have kept her sanity to the unforgiving hours, crouched over calloused feet, bent over hands, face to face with one too many hairy, smelly, and sometimes menstruating labias. I was so excited when he called to say that he was coming straight from the airport to see me. You know, it's been weeks and I've really missed him, Gemma babbled. It's been weeks. Oh, sorry. She was relaxed and talkative as usual, even with her legs spread wide open and her clit exposed. Her casualness had always unnerved 𝗠𝗲𝗱, mostly because, despite herself, she found it quite charming. Happy probably thought so too. She supposed it was one of the things that made him fall in love with her, deeply enough for him to lose touch with himself. Along with his daughters back in Albay and his wife of 3 years, his withdrawal from their lives happened slowly, his absence in a blink. It opened a void that reduced their existence to a dot, a period that ended his time with them as a loving father and a husband.
Maraming salamat, Ms. Jet Tagasa. Our next author will also be reading an excerpt from her book. Let's all give a round of applause for Ms. Angela Gabrielle from Punan.
I'll read 3 poems today, so I have this nifty things. Okay, this is Still Water. I used to look not in mirrors, but in people, for my own reflection, hoping to learn, seeing an ugly spot in the horizon that disturbs. But you are the water that fills the empty pool, caged as it is by the boundaries of a cube, not a bottomless void, but full, voluminous. In its ripples, I no longer see traces of myself, but you, only you, in all your terrible sublime, removing this tendency to look longingly, but to blink, willing to enter the body of water as myself. It is you I see, not the image of me in you, but you, coming in tiny waves to form something I am trying to describe, so that I will not run from the attempt, so that I will no longer feel the threat of rain to brim the water to overflow, but simply the dance of some kind of sun on the surface of the waves. And though I am too human not to think that this moment will pass, I am certain and not wanting to use you as a mirror. I am gazing at one perfect image for once. Thank you. The next is The Separation after Anandita Sengupta. I could wait if waiting is forever. 5 years longer I must wait for a marriage, the astrologer says. Perhaps if he looks at the stars, he might see the weight of my love for you. Or maybe he will see the consolations of waiting that I have done and still must do. Perhaps. Wait. What a cruel word. Wait, wait, wait. Waiting, a verb, action and inaction. Something someone said, remembrance is a type of waiting? Is remembrance what we must do? I must remember. Barth says something about how only the lover waits. The beloved is there at the other end, but maybe are they both not waiting? I have too many questions. This is how I get excited. The astrologer draws a chart and says I will be married. If not now, when, I say. He says, when you give up the dream to just wait. I meander instead of waiting. I salivate, I hunger, I desire. Waiting might be a good thing for making me productive. A marriage, I will be married, it seems certain, the dream that must be given up. For reality to occur, we must give our dreams away. And what is the reward? What is the union? I know only of marriages written in my ancestors' blood, not paper. Maybe I'll wait for you, if not for you, then for a marriage. It's what I've always wanted, I think. Something like that. A dream of houses and fences with you and our good neighbors. I'll take note, I'll remember. I'll tell you one day I waited for an undying love that raised me through the decades. As long as I have you, as long as you are mine. And then this last poem is Cityscape. So, okay. As I rest my weary eyes upon the state of this city, I wonder if I may finally be given leave to leave it. So often have I dreamt of moving away. It seems a cage to be caught in this gray cityscape. Some black and white movie someone has forgotten about, and I, the lost cat, abandoned in the dump. I wonder if I will ever see snow again, or if I will become loved again, if this heavy note of rain on a restless sun is all I will ever experience. I want so much to see other landscapes, wet my feet in other shores, feel the soft in other oceans, feel the soft breeze of other shores. I am too weary, having loved in this forgotten city. The peals of the church and the heavy traffic distract, but my soul knows the perils of what it encountered. Affection turned distant, love turned ill to illness. Forgive me, my country, but I want to forget you, as I have forgotten many things. I want to be done with you so I can rest. I want the ordeal to be over. And yet I know the longer I reside here, the longer the memories take over, and I can't take it any longer. Take me to the libraries of books yet unopened. My story here is done. No backwards look, no longing touch, no more to save my soul, and may forever be in the hands of another, in the shores of another place, far, far away from this lonely city that will forget me, will forget you, will forget us. I dip my toes in salt water, and it stings for a moment to stay a minute longer. I welcome the sting as I've welcomed all pain into my heart, crucifying me. But I know my time will come, my place is not here, and the travel is far, but I will go, embark on a new journey, and change the feeble rocks of new earth to the foundations of a building, knowing all I've already left here, all I'm willing to leave behind. A goodbye which, once uttered, solidifies in the air. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Miss Angela. And next up, reading an excerpt from her book, Miss Monica Macansantos.
Hi, thank you. I'm going to read the essay I mentioned a while ago about my childhood friend, James. Light flickers between leaves and tendrils of your foster mother's backyard garden. Two figures emerge from the dusk of memory. You are the white, dark-eyed, restless teenager chasing the smaller, dark-haired, brown-skinned child. The dining room lamp is switched on. Dinner is about to be served, and your foster mother and my parents are waiting. But we don't head indoors, not yet. We prefer to stay outside, chasing each other until the darkness snatches our figures away from each other's sight. Despite your rough and tumble way of playing tag, you never chase me into your foster mother's unruly garden. There's snakes in there, you tell me, perhaps repeating what she told you, but without her heavy French accent. I don't need to be warned. My fear of the dark is enough to keep me away. When night falls, we return to your house, where your foster mother gives you a stern look before telling you to set the table. She complains about your slowness. Your name rings in the air as brightly as a lamp that hangs like a golden basketed fruit over the table. 𝗍𝗲𝗻, your hands are dirty. 𝗍𝗲𝗻, go get the ice cream. You narrow your eyes and fall silent. You retreat to your room after dinner. She speaks to my parents of the liquor that fed you in the womb, of your slowness at school, of your rock-hard stubbornness that only cracks open to reveal your rage. You laugh your heart out the next time we visit you. Your fingers dance under my armpits, and your name rings in my throat when I scream in protest. On our next visit, you are gone from that house filled with musty, doily-covered furniture. That house covered in vines that are never trimmed. We listen to your voice as it bodies forth from a telephone receiver from a state school in the big city. Your foster mother winces as she holds the phone to her ear, and I can see how your words sting. Your words float out from the static, and I cling to them, wondering whether even your breath will be muted, snatched away. My family has since returned to our country, but years after my parents receive your foster mother's final letter to them, I return to America. Unable to find you, I imagine you, a grown man, walking down a darkening city street, your eyes turned down, never speaking, never making these scenes in my mind seem real. What feels more real is your impish grin and your dark eyes laughing, brightening the room of memory, the same way in which that dinner lamp, if someone still switches it on, brightens that lonely, dusty house, faintly illuminating that dark, unkempt garden, reaching into the hollows of those bushes until the eyes of snakes, touched by the light, begin to shine.
Okay, so I will be reading from the newest collection story in the collection, which is Road Trip. Originally, I was going to title it Mañanita, pero medyo on the nose, no? So in the story, the central character is part of a group of cops that inspire confidence. Not. Yeah. So they have gone on this road trip, and they plan to celebrate the birthday of their chief, no? And something unexpected happens. So we're starting this story, this excerpt from the point at which babayaran nila yung meal nila at a roadside karinderya. Loud, drunken laughter erupts from the other tables again, and 𝗍𝗲𝗍 turns to look. The young woman is in the middle of the group of officers, and she's arguing with Logroño. She is increasingly agitated, the color rising from her neck to the apples of her cheeks, where the top of her mask ends. So, pandemic time to, no? We've given you all our supplies, and now my family doesn't have any food left. We don't know when we can go out and buy again, and we have to pay the supplier for those beers. This is not enough. 𝗍𝗲𝗍 sees the purple bills in her hand, 300 pesos, as payment for the dinners and drinks of 13 men. Logroño just keeps laughing at her, pretending to tuck his clutch bag under his armpit to protect it from greedy fingers. Uy, don't charge me Manila prices for a provinciana meal, huh? His delivery has the rest of the men, including the chief, in stitches. He reaches out with his free hand, grabbing her in the crotch, through the fabric of her dress. I can give you more, but only if you try to be nicer to me. She tries to back away, but now there are men Behind her, beside her, a wall of flab and muscle blocking her retreat. He wiggles his fat hand underneath her as he says it, wiggles it fast and then jabs hard. The chief roars in approval, and so do the rest of the men, their laughter deepening, darkening into something foul and ugly. When she pushes his hand away, the clutch bag comes flying out, striking her hard in the face. In seconds, her right cheek reddens and the blood starts beading beside her eye. Random, easy, practiced. 𝗫𝘳𝘁 glances at the old clock on the wall behind the cash register. It's 8:45 p.m. The light from the bulbs intensifies and the candles start flickering wildly. When she touches her cheek, her fingertips come away red. She looks at her hand for a moment, and before Logroño can dart away, she smears blood on his forehead. The light bulbs dim and then die out completely. At the same time, the candles go out. 𝗫𝘳𝘁 feels static in the air, a sensation that feels like crackling fury. He can hear the other men cursing, angry, confused, a little frightened. "Hey, turn on the damn lights," the chief booms, while someone in the group tries desperately to fire up a lighter that won't work. 𝗫𝘳𝘁 suddenly finds the woman standing beside him. "Are you all right?" he asks. I have bandages in my backpack." She doesn't glance at him, doesn't even seem to have heard what he's just said. "We must be paid," she says quietly.
Wow. Maraming salamat to all of our writers today for sharing parts of your work. Very powerful in different ways, but also in similar ways because we're all perhaps familiar with some of these realities and experiences and emotions that they shared. So siguro I won't add na to what they have shared, but to say na lang na we all have an addition, if you have not already, to your TBR list, to be read list. Accidents Happen by F.H. Batacan, Returning to My Father's Kitchen, Essays by Monica Macansantos, Young Enough to Play by Angela Gabrielle Fabunan, and The Secret Lives of OFWs by Jet Tagasa. I'm excited to read more of these. Maraming salamat. And we are now reaching the end of our Panayam sa Panitikan episode or event. But we cannot part ways, of course, without recognizing everyone who was part of today's event. May I call on our friends from 𝗍𝗶𝘁𝗶𝗶 to give and award our certificates of recognition. Our Deputy Director and Director, Sir Rex and Sir Vlad.
Magandang hapon po. Hapon na pala sa atin ngayon. Ako po si 𝗦𝗍𝗶𝗃, Deputy Director ng 𝗍𝗶 UP Institute of Creative Writing. And to close our program, let me present the certificates to our panelists and moderator for today. The 𝗍𝗶𝘁 UP Institute of Creative Writing presents these certificates of appreciation to F.H. Batacan, Monica Macansantos, Angela Gabrielle Fabunan, Jet Tagasa, and of course Gabrielle Paras for participating as panelists and moderator in the Panayam sa Panitikan episode 6, Panayam Pinay, given this June 25, 2025, signed by myself, 𝗫𝗏𝗄, Deputy Director, 𝗍𝗶𝘁𝗶𝗃, and Professor Vladimir P. Gonzalez, Director, UP Institute of Creative Writing. Salamat. Sige, quick photo op lang po siguro tayo sa bago mag-tracer. Ganito ba? Hindi naman. Pwede po.
insights sa ating writers. Now, to officially close our program, may I call on the Deputy Director of 𝗍𝗶𝘁𝗶𝗶𝘃, Assistant Professor 𝗦𝗊𝗃.
Hello po, mabilis lang din po. Para officially po na i-close ang ating program. At po, maraming salamat sa panelists. Maraming salamat po sa mga dumalo ngayong umaga at hapon. Kahit po konti ang mga estudyante dito sa UP ngayon dahil mid-year classes po namin. Natutuwa po kami na napuno natin itong classroom na to, na ito po ang classrooms namin na ginagamit literal na kapag dito sa College of Arts and Letters. Gusto ko lang po banggitin din na nung ginawa namin yung title nung tawag dito nung event for today. Medyo na-anxious ako na pamagatan siya na Panayam Pinay kasi baka magdating na essentialist kasi very diverse yung genres, yung creative writing practices, perspectives ng authors natin today. At ayaw ko kapag naririnig ko yung ewan ko kung nasi-share niyo to, pero pagka may mga tao nagsasabi, paborito kong women writer, si ganito, because that presupposes na may paborito kayong writer that is not in fact a woman, At ayaw ko lang na mag-create ng siguro ng parameters na magiging strict yung discussions natin today. I was very glad to be proven wrong na dun sa anxieties na ito, dahil unfounded ito, and I felt very fortunate to have heard itong diverse discussions about writing practices and publishing experiences of these writers na both engaging and of course empowering din. Napaka-importante na marinig galing din sa especially sa writing community ang experiences sa publishing at sa creative writing processes. Hindi man namin sinadya na syempre hindi namin alam yung in the first place kung ano yung background or alam namin yung writing nila, but yung iba yung marinig pa rin yung experiences nila rito at may mga convergences. Dalawa sa speakers natin ngayon ay talked about genre, crime fiction, spec fic. It's so empowering to hear na nagsusulat hindi lang basta kababaihang manunulat, but manunulat na nagsusulat ng genre in a time na sinasabi na ang binanggito ni Ma'am 𝗍𝗁𝗏 kanina na sa academia still literary fiction but genre's queen sa panahon ngayon. So empowering to hear of course people writing about poetry. I don't know, my background comes from poetry as well then, so to hear Angela talk about it, to hear Ma'am Monica talk about yung pagiging tough sell ng essay sa ngayon. Napapatunayan talaga, and I think nabanggit ito ni Ma'am Jet kanina na yung kababaihan talaga ang may sensitivity sa injustice, sa oppression, sa pang-araw-araw. And ang nangyayari nito ay nagiging well-rounded talaga yung discussion natin. Hindi to discussion lang, and of course, importante pag-usapan ang ang patriarkiya at ang toxic culture. But when women talk about these types of oppressions, lumalaki at lumalawak yung type ng discussions natin precisely because kababaihan ang mayroong kaalaman dito sa mga bagay na to. And to end this, you can't go wrong talaga with bringing women together. Maraming salamat po from the 𝗍𝗶𝘁𝗶𝗃. Kita-kita tayo sa susunod na mga episodes pa ng Panayam.
Maraming salamat, Sir Rex. And that closes our episode of Panayam sa Panitikan, Panayam Pinay, kasama ang apat na kababaihang manunulat. Thank you once again to everyone who's here today.